Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1441 of our daily content grind. I got to looking at the calendar earlier today and realized, oh, I'm 3 weeks away from 4 years of daily content and have somehow kept what little sanity I had when I started this YouTube channel. I have nothing planned for such a big occasion. We literally might just talk about what it's been like for the last 4 years of content creation in particular. What do you do after you've made 3 years worth of videos and then still have to come up with enough videos for the 4th year? Because the struggle changes every single year. We could be doing that, or I could come up with something big. I don't know. Depends on how much time I've got, which these days is not a lot. But hey, we'll do something. Now, for today, you'll notice this week I've kind of been on like a design kick, where I kind of just want to talk about aesthetic, So we talked about the Revenge of the Fallen YOLO Park toy a couple days ago. Yesterday, it was fessing up to the movie designs I actually like. But now we're going to be talking about something that's more universally loved and agreed upon, and that is going all the way back to Transformers: The War Within. We don't have many fond memories of Dreamwave, thanks to Pat Lee and everything he got up to, but we can't take away from the art, and we cannot take away from the writers that hopefully got paid. Point being, War Within, it's something that everyone went nuts for when it first came out. I don't hear about it nearly as much anymore, mostly because the design style and the concept have been done so many times now. You have to remember, War Within was the first time we had a Cybertronian set storyline for Transformers. Like with like an origin point and all of that. It was a big deal back then, and the designs were radically different from what we normally got with Transformers. So let's start that with the obvious place and start with Optimus Prime himself. This was pretty crazy. Like, you can tell just how much they were trying to show we're not just doing the same old thing. He doesn't have the window chest. He does not have the red forearms. They're gray here. He's got these gigantic tires buried in his torso. Remember, this is before the live action movies. This is around I believe this is about 20 years ago now, like 2004 or so. So this is around the time of the Unicron trilogy, when it was not a big deal to redesign Optimus Prime into something fairly different. But even then, Armada was the only one that really did that. Energon and Cybertron still kind of stayed true to the overall design of Optimus. So these reimaginings were stylish at the time, but you could get away with a lot more than you can get away with now. I don't think this kind of reimagining would work today, even though this is a really, really cool looking design. And it carries over to the vehicle mode too. The vehicle mode looks sick. I love how this vehicle mode looks. It is a shame. It is a genuine shame that the only way these exist in any capacity is with, like, titanium, especially on the official. I do know there's third-party stuff that have tried to emulate this style. I haven't seen any that are particularly good at it. And frankly, they tend to focus on other versions of the, like, pre-Earth Cybertron concept designs. Usually like the High Moon Studios, like Fall of Cybertron, War for Cybertron, that kind of aesthetic. The Dreamwave stuff gets lost a lot, and it shouldn't. Look how cool this looks. And the fact is, like, the only official toy you have is the titanium, and that's a very unfortunate statement. Same is true of the next one we are going to be looking at. That is the Grimlock design. Has any Grimlock gone harder than this one? Like, genuinely. There's just something about it. Like, it's definitely more true to the character than Optimus is. Like, he's got a lot more of the the traditional drapings of Grimlock, right down to the kibble hanging off the back. But converting those little T-Rex arms that hung off the back into a massive set of exhausts or cannons, depending on your imagination at the time, it's a really cool look. Like, it's an incredibly fierce Grimlock. Everyone went nuts for this design, by the way. Again, first time we'd ever seen the Dinobots depicted as something other than dinosaurs. These were Dinobots. D-Y-N-A bots. Little wordplay there for it. Like, I didn't come up with it, they did. Don't blame me. But no, they were just exceptionally cool. And then you get the tank mode for Grimlock, which I love that they worked on stuff that felt like the original. You can see here, there's fun stuff going on. For instance, like, you look at Grimlock in his tank mode, that front end, like what's making up the front, like, I don't know, like drive section of the tank, it's his chest, it's his body from his T-Rex mode. And a lot of the Dinobots have little elements like that in what would be their vehicle modes. And you can see some of the other vehicle mode stylings here. What I loved is that if the character had a already designed Cybertronian mode from G1, they emulated it for War Within. And a lot of that style became the basis for what they were doing with the other characters. So it's kind of a way of expanding on an idea that existed ever since the very first episode of Transformers, but never really had a chance to grow. As long as we're on Grimlock, let's take a look at the other Dinobots. Now, I should state, it's hard finding good images and sources for a lot of these visuals. Frankly, if Matt Moylan hadn't posted so many photos of pages on Twitter, I wouldn't have visual examples for you. Because the only things that show like really good visual examples of like the designs of these are the trade paperbacks that have like bio sections intermixed in, and those haven't been released digitally, so only photos of pages exist. So we have to resort to things like that to look at, you know, how Sludge's design was created. And you can see this long barrel cannon that puts a lot of the bulk and weight in toward the back end. Okay, so you can see where it gets the Brontosaurus from. It's a great little thing. We see with Snarl where the spines from the Stegosaurus mode come into play. I will admit, having a massive set of treads going vertically through his body does not quite look right on Snarl. I think that is weird. This is one of those situations where I think the vehicle mode really works. I'm not sure about that robot mode. You'd have to sell me pretty hard on that one. We've got my boy Swoop, who is predictably a Cybertronian jet. You know, that one will be honest. Swoop kind of has like the beast equivalent of the Seeker body. He's got the wings in the right spot. His beak is the cockpit. You know it's true. He is basically a Dino Seeker in design. So having him have like a similar look in his jet mode, not terribly surprising. I think my favorite solution is Slag, because yeah, he does get to keep his familiar elements like the big hood behind his head, which is supposed to be his dino head. Now it's just kind of a detail. He's got guns up there to emulate the horns, and emulate the horns in the vehicle mode. He's a drill tank. That's actually really clever. I actually really, really like this take on Slag. Yeah, the Dinobots themselves, I know there's third-party sets of them, and I'm happy they exist for the people who can afford stuff like that. But yeah, this is actually really cool. This is a really, really cool design style. Yeah, I wish this was like a thing. I wish it was like more commonly accepted. Nowadays, we have to do what Cyberverse did and come up with excuses as to why the Dinobots have ancient animals from Earth as alt modes. I don't know. I just kind of prefer this. This is a better idea. if we're talking about design styles, I did mention Seekers, so we can talk about Starscream a bit. Yes, it's the core of what made up my absolute favorite Starscream design of all time. Yeah, it's the only one for, like, it's the only design that really kind of escaped War Within and Titanium with some dignity. Obviously, the Cybertron design is not exactly the same as the one pictured here, but it is close. You can definitely see where the DNA is, especially in details like the heavy shoulders with the wings coming off of them. The semblance of the Tetrajet shape from the original G1 toy. It's there in spirit. These were done in titanium. They're really not as well represented, unfortunately. The details are wrong. The shoulders don't have the right look to them, that kind of thing. Kind of why I wish that Cybertron toy was done up a few other times, because, yeah, they would pass for War Within if you want to do them as, like, comic series, studio series. Just saying, Hasbro, it's not too late to do that Skywarp. Just saying. Here's a fun part, is that there's also a design for a generic Seeker that you see here, and there is little differences. Like, that's the cool thing. Like, even characters that are very similar to each other in most fiction actually do have different depictions in War Within to separate them out. Little details that are different across them, just so they are like a different look, even if the overall body shape is the same. The other one in this shot, besides the generic Seeker, is Cup. And Cup is funny. You look at that and go, wait. Cup's front end is supposed to be, like, Cup's windshield is supposed to be right over his front end. So, funny thing, Don Figueroa, who did all the design work for War Within, actually based the vehicle mode on a shot from the original G1 cartoon where Cup was animated driving backwards as an error, because apparently whoever did the animating couldn't tell what side the vehicle was supposed to be driving from. So he ended up being like a rear heavy vehicle instead of a front heavy vehicle. Also, Cup ended up being with a windshield face, which is kind of a weird design choice for Cup, but you'll see why it makes sense in a minute. We'll get there. For then, let's continue on with things like little details between different designs. Here is Prowl and Bluestreak. Now, if you look, they do carry a similar silhouette, and they are using their parts the same way. The front end becomes the chest. Well, not even that, really. Not even really that, really. Let's rewind a little bit. So, they both have, like, the guns over, on top of their body. But whereas Prowl is in a more traditional between the shoulder and the head, Bluestreak's right off of the shoulders. You see wings, whereas Prowl's are right off of the back, as in like the original door wings. Bluestreak has them on the sides of his arms. Little differences like that. And you can see the shape of their original chests in these designs, but both are very different. And the vehicles they turn into are very different. So the design silhouette is there. We talked about this yesterday, where design silhouette is so important for character identity. And this shows it exceptionally well. You can see that both of them are the Datsuns. They share that DNA, they share that silhouette, but the details make them very distinct from each other, especially having different vehicle modes completely. That's good design work. That's really creative. And like in a way of like, I wish they would take that philosophy to the Seekers so we could actually get all of them released in one line instead of spreading them out over years because they're just repaints of each other. This is the stuff I like. If we look at more of the black and white designs, we're going to focus in on the right side, which is Hound and Trailbreaker. Hound on top, Trailbreaker on the bottom. I'm not terribly big on the redesigns for Trailbreaker. Like, I like my boy to be a little bit heavier, and I'm not like seeing like camper truck off of the vehicle mode. That one might be a misfire for me. Hound is fine. Hound seems like what I would expect. The more interesting designs are on the left page, but those we have color. I just want to point out that there's another windshield chest thing going on with Trailbreaker. And if we then skip over to this color sheet, well, now we can kind of see why. I love that they actually use the window head shield akin to the G1 toy for this design of Ironhide. I think this makes this incredibly distinct. I think this makes it a really good homage to his original G1 toy while still making him look like a tough, powerful bot in robot mode. This is a fun way of using those old details. I really like this design. There is also an implication here that all of the veterans, the older Transformers amongst the cast, all have these kind of windshield defenses over their heads and faces for whatever reason. So, Trailbreaker has a smaller one. He's kind of depicted as like an older Autobot in the original cartoon. We know Ironhide is a veteran. Cup is obviously a veteran. They all kind of had that same little design touch. It's informative of the characters in a weird way. Yeah, it's nothing that I don't think they really ever explained it. It's just a really cool design element to go across them. And then Bumblebee is a great example of what I said before. If they had a alt mode that was depicted in G1 from Cybertron, they went with it for this. So he is the flying saucer from the original episode. The difference here is that the robot mode has been redesigned to look like it could actually transform into it instead of a little yellow car that obviously does not have wings and obviously has Volkswagen Beetle parts on him. It's a fantastic little design touch. Fantastic. Let's take a quick look at our I'm brain blanked. Our Constructicons. So we have Mixmaster up top, Scrapper, and then Hook at the bottom. And these definitely ring a lot more true. The robot modes definitely have a lot of that familiarity of the original characters in them, and then the vehicle modes. Always interesting with the change-ups to like construction vehicles, because you don't have construction on Cybertron the way you do on Earth. The technology is radically different. But they still look very identifiable. I do like that. And then we have Bone Crusher, Long Haul, and Scavenger here. I'm not as crazy on Bone Crusher or Scavenger's design up top. It's okay. It's okay. And then Bone Crusher down at the bottom. Bone Crusher's just always got to be a big, beefy boy somehow. Long Haul in the middle is not bad. He's just like a huge, just extending off the front end of the vehicle to make it smooth to the back end. That's actually not a bad idea. I don't dislike that. There's a Devastator, and I will admit I was going to include him, but he just kind of looks like Devastator. That is the inverse here. So let me show you the extremes. Let me show you the extremes. So Megatron, for instance, just kind of looks like Megatron with extra details. I've never been huge on War Within Megatron's overall design. The tank mode looks cool, but the individual robot mode we did a Megatron and added tank treads to his shoulder. That feels like all that it ended up being. When you look at his new details in robot mode, okay, you've got I don't know, look at this yellow bauble on his chest now. What's the yellow bauble for? Why is that important? Why is it exposed? It looks important. Why is something important exposed like that? It's one of those designs that just feels like they added detail for the sake of adding detail, and it doesn't have the loving reimagining of Optimus Prime or the fun detail work that the Dinobots have. It just kind of feels like a little phoned in. I'm not going to lie. I feel like this design, I feel like Megatron in general, War Within, could have been a little bit more interesting in flavor. And then there's the designs they completely radically changed. Jetfire is nothing like how he was in the cartoon or in the original toy line. I mean, the colors are there, but silhouette-wise, yeah, he would appear to be a completely different character to you. Almost weirdly enough, the weird vibe I get is if a Megatron design was an Autobot. Do you see where I'm getting that? Like, between the arm weapon, the heavy shoulders, like the more commanding presence, the smooth, like the flatter design to the chest than you usually get. Like, it feels like that to me. It's a weird way of describing it, but it kind of is. Jet mode also looks really, really cool. It's kind of Beast Machine's Jetstorm, not gonna lie. Which gives you a killer retool idea if they ever want to do this. Yeah, like, it's a cool design. It's a really cool design. It's exceptionally different from its origin point, but it is overall just a really cool design. And then you have my favorite change. And this is where it's just better to go simple, but still be striking. That's Ratbat. Think of what this did. So Ratbat in the Marvel Comics was taken seriously because he was actually effective at leading and commanding the Decepticons. You know, there are points in that book where Ratbat got closer than anyone to winning the war for the Decepticons. But it's always hard to take him seriously or understand where he got to that point in the story because he's always just Soundwave's cassette when he doesn't have Laserbeak or Buzzsaw. He's like plan C of his like personal flyers. But to reimagine him like this with a full robot mode opens up so much. This is the origin point of things like Senator Ratbat. You know, this is, you know, and, you know, like knowing that like there's a Ratbat before he was a cassette. And then the question is, like, how did he get from that to the little flying rodent that was obedient to Soundwave? You open up a lot of questions. You know, just introducing this character back then made everyone go, wait, how does that end up with that? What? Like, fascinating discussions back then. You know, reimaginings like that, especially knowing that it's in the past, you know, and the stuff from the present that we know is still a thing, that changes things dramatically. That opens up so many discussion points. You know, and that's what War Within was good at. Knowing it was a prequel, let us look at designs like this and go, okay, how did that become that? And sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. But the times you can't, it's just more fodder for that fanfic writer in your brain. No, I miss points like this. Understand, like, there's so many designs we could go through. I didn't even touch on the Fallen. I feel like in the year of the Primes, we've talked about the Fallen plenty. But for everything else, like, I stare in awe at how interesting and fun the design work was in this series, and how it really didn't go anywhere. Okay, yeah, you ended up with a few toys. They're relegated to what could potentially be called the worst line of Transformers we ever had. Where else are they? Like, it's been over 2 decades. This is where you need, like, comic books in studio series. Not to make, you know, G1 Grimlock sell, like blue and comic shaded, so he can be released as Marvel Grimlock again. No, you need it for things like this. For some of the best design work Transformers ever got, but never made it to a toy aisle. This stuff is overdue. And this is the kind of stuff I feel like would be a breath of fresh air in the franchise. Be nice to see kids, gravitate to designs that didn't just look like the same old Optimus Prime that their parents have been buying them for years, you know? It's different. Even today, 20 plus years on, it still stands out as just being really cool designs. And we need more of it. So, this is just my look back. It's one of my favorite periods in Transformers design work. I promise we're done with design. Okay, I will give it a rest after this week. But I just wanted to take you on this little nostalgia trip with me. So, thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.